Hi everyone, welcome to the 2019 PWN-USA Policy Fellowship Application webinar. Thank you for joining us. Now, if you were able to join us when we held this webinar live, this is actually a different recording. Unfortunately, that version wasn't recorded, and so we're giving it a second go. What this means is during the first live webinar, Ebony Turk, a former PWN-USA Policy Fellow and the Membership Engagement Coordinator at PWN-USA, was able to come on the fellowship and talk a little bit about her experience as a fellow and what that meant to her and the challenges that she faced. If you would like to be connected with a fellow and talk through their experience before you decide whether or not you want to apply, I encourage you to do that. Please reach out to me. You can reach me at Kelly, Kelly, .pwnusa@gmail.com, and I'll be helpful and I'll be sure to help connect you with someone. That being said, let's get started with the webinar. So to start with, I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important that PWN has this policy fellowship. We know that it is critical to push back, be vocal, and be heard when policies are being crafted that are going to impact our lives. And this is true in all aspects of policy and decision making on the state and federal and local level. An urgent part of our response to PWN is to help build the policy bench and to make sure that the folks who are making and influencing policies are grounded in human rights, racial justice, gender justice, and reproductive justice so that those policies serve our communities. We want to make sure that the folks who are representing our issues represent our communities. It's a priority for us that women living with HIV, and specifically women who are living with HIV who historically have not had a seat at the policy table, are really part of the solution. The PWN-USA Policy Fellowship aims to give women living with HIV the tools that they need in order to engage in the policy world and take a seat at the policy bench. So a little bit of a program overview. We start with a quote from June Jordan. "We are the ones we've been waiting for." We know that this is true. It really speaks to our political moment right now. The federal policy environment historically has been inaccessible to women living with HIV, and in the current political environment, that's even more difficult. And the attacks on our fundamental human rights are becoming more and more severe. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Of the top 23 cabinet positions in the Trump administration, 21 are occupied by white, cisgendered men and women. We believe that all women living with HIV should have a range of tools, the whole range of tools that are necessary to live healthy, safe lives with dignity. Policy and advocacy is one tool, one essential tool in that toolbox that's going to help get us there. And so with that said, we're here to launch our third version of the PWN Policy Fellowship. This time it will be a 9-month-long program that's for all women living with HIV. The goal is to increase participants' ability to engage effectively in the federal and state policy and advocacy arena. Like I've said, it's critical that women living with HIV are equipped with a wide array of tools to support vibrant, visionary, and strategic advocacy on behalf of their communities, especially in the current political environment. And I want to say even beyond the current political environment. Where we are now is not where we will always be. Part of what this fellowship is doing is giving women living with HIV the tools they need to push us beyond where we are right now and to help us achieve our vision. So who's eligible for this policy fellowship? Well, all women living in the US, all women living with HIV in the US are, including women of trans experience. But one of the things I really want to highlight is that we strongly encourage folks who historically haven't had a seat at the policy table to really make use of this policy fellowship program. So young women, women of color, immigrant women, people of trans experience, LGBTQ, and gender nonconforming folks who live in the South are strongly encouraged to apply. Really, you're eligible if you're a woman living with HIV who has a strong desire to effect meaningful change in the lives of other women living with HIV by pushing for policy change. So what do fellows get? Fellows are going to have coaching and mentoring to support their policy advocacy goals. And this includes opportunities to attend policy meetings, both in person and via conference calls. You'll have opportunities to engage with national advocacy coalitions and access to policy experts. You'll have the opportunity to learn skills and apply important policy skills like writing, research, and organizing. These skills are indispensable for folks who want to influence policy, and they're marketable professional development skills. Fellows who graduate from the program will receive a certificate of completion at the end of the program. One of the things that I really want to lift up about what fellows get is this coaching and mentoring part. Fellows are going to get both a coach and they will have a practicum host organization that they work with. So this policy is going to help you make those important connections with folks who've been doing this work for a really long time. It's going to spread your network of policy advocates and give you access to folks who have been pushing and influencing the government on the state and federal level. And it'll give you close access to them with the ability to talk through your ideas and to talk through the policy projects that they've been working on. Our content covered. So over the course of this 9-month fellowship, fellows are going to learn how to expand their understanding of the structure of government and how federal policy is developed and implemented. We're going to talk about key frameworks for advocacy interventions. So what these key frameworks means is they're going to be ways that we talk about approaching and looking at policy change. The 4 key frameworks that we highlight in the Policy Fellowship are reproductive justice, racial justice, gender justice, and economic justice. These ground our policy work and they motivate us in our policy work to ensure that we are looking at communities that are going to be the most impacted by policies and to really dig in and see how those policies are going to impact, whether they are going to cause harm to the communities that we care about or whether they're going to lift up and help fulfill the basic and fundamental human rights of those communities. Included in this, we're going to learn how to analyze policy. We're going to learn about how policy happens, how it's made, how laws are made, and also about whether the consequences that policies are going to have on our lives. We're also going to deepen our understanding of strategies to affect policy change. This includes, but isn't limited to, grassroots advocacy, learning how to build power from the ground up, effective coalition building, and building and maintaining relationships with policymakers and stakeholders who have influence over the policymaking process. And as I said before, some of those stakeholders are going to be intimately related to you in this Policy Fellowship program as coaches or maybe as host organizations. So it's really going to link you into the network of folks who have influence over the policymaking process. Now I'll go over some of the program structure. This time around, the PWN Policy Fellowship program is going to be a 9-month commitment from April 2019 through December 2019. I want to stress that this can be an intense commitment, and you should take that into account when you're deciding whether you want to apply or not. If you know that in between April and December, you're going to have 2 months where you're not able to engage, you're not able to come on webinars and to complete assignments, that's something you should consider. It might not be the best time for you to apply for this fellowship. But if you are ready to dive in and dive in deep, I encourage you to apply. So the content is going to begin in April. And the main content of the Policy Fellowship, when we're really learning and digging into new content, is going to stretch through mid-October. We're going to have webinars about about once every 2 weeks. Every Friday, one Friday every 2 weeks, we'll have a new webinar where we'll dig into a new topic. After mid-October, fellows are going to begin their practicum project. And that's going to be presented, their final project will be due in December. The practicum gives fellows the opportunity to get some hands-on experience in the policy world. So you're actually going to get to choose your own project, work with a host organization that hopefully will help you develop a project that both meets their goals and your goals in furthering your hands-on experience in the policy world. And then you'll have a concrete, tangible project at the end of this program. After each of our webinars, so our webinars last about an hour and a half. After each of them, we're going to have reading assignments and homework. So this happens in between sessions to try and help fellows really sort of grapple with the topics that we're covering. Some of them can be pretty tricky. I'm going to go over what those topics are in a little bit. But what the homework assignments do is help you, after the fact, after the hour and a half long webinar, help you really process exactly what we just learned and articulate it in a way to show that you are understanding it. We're also going to have one in-person training, which is going to be in September 2019. We're still working out the details of that, but it's something to have in mind and on your calendar. You're going to get to collaborate on policy issue-based teams. These teams are generally grouped around subject matter. So for example, this year we had teams that focused on access to healthcare for communities of color, sexual and reproductive health and rights, economic justice, and comprehensive sex education. It's so important when you're working on policy to know how to work with others collaboratively and to bounce ideas off of each other such that you can further both of your interests. And so we really encourage you to work with your team and talk with your team about, maybe it's your policy practicum topic, maybe figuring out ways to collaborate so that you can apply to conferences together since you're interested in similar things. So really figuring out ways to make, teamwork makes the dream work. So make that dream work. You're also going to have coaching from seasoned advocates. I talked about this a little bit already, but we do have policy coaches who come on and they'll tell you about their experiences in the policy world and help you brainstorm ideas that you have for engaging deeper on policy projects. We also have options to participate in additional PWN-USA skills building webinars. So if you're a policy fellow, we'll be sure to keep you linked into that so you can continue to develop your skills both within and without the policy fellowship. So now we'll go over our tentative schedule a little bit. The program is going to start on Friday, April 5th. Right now we're planning to have all of our webinars at 12 p.m. Pacific time. That's 3 p.m. Eastern time. But as we get the policy fellows together, if we need to figure out another time, we'll work on that going forward. So first, our webinar will first be on Friday, April 5th, and that's going to be a program orientation. We're going to go over exactly all of our expectations. We're going to get everyone's calendar out and put everything down so that you know from April through December exactly what to expect. Our next web session 2, is going to be on Policy and Government 101. So here we'll learn about the basic structure of the government, how the 3 branches of government work together. We'll also answer questions about how laws are made and how the separation of powers work. And then in our next web session, we'll take an even deeper dive into policy and government. We're going to learn how federal policy change relates to state and local policy change. We'll talk about how different federal agencies impact and interplay with state and local level political processes. Web session 4 is going to be a technical one. So we're going to talk about federal budget advocacy. Here we talk about the federal budget appropriations process. For those of you who are watching this now, it should be very familiar. We just went through a government shutdown in part because of the federal budget appropriations process. And so we'll sort of dig into what exactly happens around that. We'll also learn terms like appropriations and reconciliation, these sort of big budget terms that you need just in order to talk to folks about the federal budget process. Fellows are going to leave with a better understanding of how programs are funded on the federal level and how to advocate for increased funding, or in our current political environment, how to maintain funding when it's under attack. So we're going to leave with a better understanding of how we can advocate for more money for programs that are necessary to our health, safety, and dignity. Web session 5 is going to be on May 31st, and that is going to go over administrative advocacy and federal agencies. This is one of the most exciting and sort of nerdy parts of policy work, I think. We don't always talk about administrative agencies, but they're a huge source of law. They do a lot. You might have heard of the Department of Health and Human Services. That's where we see a lot of health regulations coming out of. We're also going to learn about agencies that fall underneath other administrative agencies. So for example, we'll talk about HRSA, the agency that administers the Ryan White program, and different ways that you can engage with administrative agencies to make sure your voice is being heard. Web session 6 is going to be our midpoint review. So here we really just take a step. We've done a ton already just by web session 6. So we take a step to take a breath and think about everything that we've done. The fellows give presentations, so you actually do a bit of a teach back about the sessions we've already gone over to make sure that all of that information is really being incorporated into your everyday. And then on Friday, July 12th, we'll start into, I'm sorry, I missed one. On web session 7, right after the midpoint review, is going to be on Friday, June 28th. There we'll talk about in-district organizing and meeting with legislators. So really we're going to ask questions like, who are the key players in developing legislation, and how can we use local networks and community advocates and things like advocacy events when you're meeting with these local lawmakers? What is going to be compelling? What is going to get your message across when you're meeting, when you're doing in-district organizing? And then we have web session 8. Here we're going to talk about key frameworks for advocacy. This is one part of a 2-part series. We start off with reproductive justice and racial justice. So these are the frameworks that at PWN we center. We center in our policy agenda, our policy work, we center it in our policy analysis. And so in this session, fellows are going to learn what it really means to take a racial justice and reproductive justice approach with policy analysis and policy change. Web session 9, we're going to see the second part of that series. So there, we're going to lift up the frames of gender justice and economic justice. So it's the same general idea, but we'll be working with different frameworks. Web session 10, we're going to talk about organizing for power. We'll talk about grassroots policy advocacy. So here we'll talk about how to apply some of the skills that we've already been talking about for the past, at this point, couple of months. We'll talk about how advocates can build power and use the power of the people to push for policy change. We'll talk about how to grow grassroots movement and make room for voices at the voices of our community at the policy table. Web session 11 will be on policy research and analysis. For this, it's really a way to look at policies and the way that they're actually impacting communities and people on the everyday. A lot of times, policies and laws and administrative rules, all of these can be written in sort of obscure language that makes it even difficult to figure out what's happening. So in policy research and analysis, what we'll talk about is digging into what that language means, and really importantly, what's the impact going to be? Who is it harming and who is it helping? In September, we're going to have our in-person training. Again, we're still fleshing out the details there, but we're going to focus on 2 main topics when we all get together as a policy cohort. We're going to talk about engaging in effective coalition building and building and maintaining relationships with policymakers and other key stakeholders. We talked a little bit about the importance of working with other people when you're pushing for policy change. This is the same idea, right? It's a critical part of the advocacy process is learning how to, 1, work with people who have interests that are similar with yours. 2, get people on your side if they don't have interests that are similar with yours. And so this is going to be, so here we're going to talk about how you're going to meet with other folks, so how you're going to build coalitions, and how you're going to maintain relationships with others and leverage sort of the power, and you are going to talk about how to, how you will, I apologize, and you'll talk about, so we'll talk about how to use folks who already have a good deal of power in order to convince them of the policy change that you are fighting for. In web session 12, we'll do our policy issue-based training. There, we're going to do electoral organizing and getting out the HIV vote. So this is going to be actually our last substantive session. Here we're going to start getting ready for 2020. It's coming, it's huge, we're all very excited. And so at this point, we've really laid all of the groundwork for how policy advocacy works. And this session is going to be the accumulation of all of those efforts. We'll talk through how policy relates to the election, and we'll really think about the skills that we've earned throughout this fellowship and how we can apply our policy expertise in order to inform and influence electoral organizing in the upcoming election. Web session 13 is going to be our year-end review. So we're going to take a comprehensive look at what we've done over the past, at this point, couple of months. And folks are going to do a teach back. So you're going to really, once again, incorporate everything that we've learned and spit it back. You're going to teach other people, the other fellows, about what you've learned. And then our practicum period opens. So that's going to extend from October 15th through December 15th. So you are going to have a couple of months to develop your own policy project in combination with your host organization. And so one of the great things about having this practicum is it gives you a chance to apply all of the skills that you've been working so hard for in a project that really reflects your own passion. It reflects the policies that you want to start pushing on. So this could look like a fact sheet. It could look like you building a coalition space to push for legislative change. It could look like a policy brief on either a really good law that you would want to see or a really bad law that you are seeing and you want to warn other folks about the risks. So this is a chance to really stretch your policy muscles and start engaging with other folks and other organizations that are doing the work every day. So here we had a couple of reflections from our past PWN-USA Policy Fellow, and again, as I said, our current Membership Engagement Coordinator, Ebony Turk. Again, if you would like to talk to a former fellow, and I encourage you to, please feel free to reach out to me at Kelly, Kelly, .pwnusa@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And now we'll go over the application a little bit. So I've put where you can find the application on the screen. You can look at it right there. And so really for the application, we have two parts, one that's required and one that's optional. Even though the second part is optional, I still highly, highly encourage you to submit a video statement and a resume, but we'll get into that a little more later. Right now, I'd like to talk to you about the online application, the required portion. So what you're going to have to submit here is just some general applicant information. This is mostly just demographic stuff. And I want to assure you that all of the information in your application is going to be kept confidential. It's just necessary that we do it so that we know who we're inviting to become a policy fellow. And then we'll ask you some questions about your experiences with civic and community engagement. So we'll ask you what you're involved in your community. Have you volunteered? Have you ever done policy work before? Now, it's okay if you haven't done policy work before, but hey, maybe you have, maybe you've participated in an advocacy campaign, or you've reached out to your local congressperson to ask them about something or to talk to them about some sort of policy issue. Maybe you've just done a little bit of research and now you know who your congressperson is. We want to know that information. And then we have 4 personal statements that we ask you to write. So these are, you'll get a prompt and you'll be asked to write sort of a short statement in response. We ask you to write more than just a sentence, but to really sit with them and think about them. This is an opportunity for you to really show us who you are and why you're interested in applying for this fellowship. And it also gives you an opportunity to show off your writing skills a bit. That leads me into the optional portion, the video statement. Maybe you actually are not that confident in your writing skills. That's fine. Part of what this video, the opportunity to submit a video is it lets us see you, even if maybe you're not that great at writing. So I encourage you to do this as well. What this is it's a 3-minute video or less, where what you're gonna do is respond to the prompt that you're gonna find in the application. And then we have all of the instructions, they're in the application, but I'll tell you this as well. So you will share the video with us by uploading it to any storage or file sharing program that gives you a shareable link. So this could be Dropbox, Google Drive, or YouTube. All of those All of those programs allow you to have a free account, so no worries on that regard. You're also going to, again, find detailed instructions for how to share that video in your online application. We also ask you to submit a resume. Again, we strongly encourage you to do this because we ask you for personal statements and we ask you for demographic information, but this resume really gives us another way to see you and see what you've been involved in. So I hope that you'll submit it. You cannot submit it with the online application. What you have to do instead is email it. And you can email it to this address here, Policy Fellows, POLICYFELLOWS.PWNUSA@gmail.com. When you're sending along that resume, please include your first and last name and the date you submitted the rest of your application. Just some general tips on the application. So first off, you can go to PWN-USA.org for application instructions and program information. We recommend that you download or print the application instructions and have them available as you complete the online application. This is mostly so that you don't have to be switching between screens, that you can have the instructions right in front of you as you're submitting. Some people are more tech savvy than others, so maybe it's not necessary for you, but it's one of our application tips. We also suggest that you type out your answers to the personal statement in a Word document and then copy and paste your responses onto the online form. This is for two reasons. First is that you're going to want to complete this application in one sitting. And so if you're typing out the responses and going back and fact checking, it makes it a little harder to do online in one sitting. Whereas if you have all the responses already typed out, already fact checked, already spell checked, you can just copy and paste them in and it makes the application process a breeze and super quick. The other reason is that we really encourage you to take your time and think through your personal statements. These both demonstrate your writing skills and convey your interest in participating. So it shows us that you are more eager to learn policy and you're willing to give the time that is necessary to learn how to do this if you're willing to sit down, type out, and think through your personal statement. And then, as I'd mentioned before, another one of the big tips is making sure that you have a secure internet connection when you're pasting your personal statement responses into your online application, because we recommend that you try and complete it in one sitting. This is just so the internet doesn't go out and you don't lose all of the work that you put into the application process. A couple of key dates and deadlines. So first I'll say the deadline to submit the application is March 1st, 2019. Mark your calendars. I suggest that you get it in before March 1st, 2019 so that you're not pushed up against the edge and really worried. If you work on it over the weekend, you should be able to finish it with no problem. Then you can submit it and be done and not worry about it. We will reach out about a week later and start scheduling interviews with folks that we are going to schedule interviews with. And so we will actually be hosting fellowship interviews from March 11th to 13th. So you can expect to try and schedule an interview sometime in there if we reach out. Now, I do want to say that while we would love to accept everyone who applies, unfortunately we cannot. So we will not be able to offer everyone a fellowship interview. Of the fellows who do interview, again, we probably will not be able to accept everyone. So we will notify those that we did accept of their acceptance on March 15th, 2019. We'll then begin our fellowship program and orientation on April 5th, 2019. And again, we're still working out the in-person training, but just to know, it's going to be in September 2019. So that is everything that I have to say about the Policy Fellowship application process. If you have any questions or any concerns, or you just want to reach out to me and figure out how to connect to a former fellow, ask about their experience, or have any other questions, you can reach me at this email, policyfellows.pwnusa@gmail.com, or you could reach me at my PWN email. My name is Kelly Flannery, so you can reach me at kelly.pwnusa@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day. I look forward to reading your application.